Matthew chapter 2, starting at verse 1. There's a continuation, actually, of last Sunday's message. Last Sunday we had the passage out of Luke, talking about the birth of Jesus. We spoke about that, and we pointed out that God will do supernatural things in our lives and through our lives. And the only thing that God requires is a willingness to obey, a willingness to serve God. The second part of that message is today. We're starting at verse 1, chapter 2, Matthew. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem. Just by way of background, these wise men were actually out of the same area that Daniel had been in. And upon the fact, God had, although it's not written in Scripture, God had showed Daniel that there was a Messiah coming, that there would be a star. They'd know that, and so they should send Magi, they were called Magi, to greet and worship the Messiah. And verse 2, saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. What is amazing is that they saw his star. Everybody else just saw stars. God is working in the midst of our situation, in our circumstances every day. We usually don't notice it. There's this huge star in the sky, and some people noticed and some didn't, and the ones that noticed, it's like, well, nice, it's pretty. I had no idea. And of course, they probably weren't asking God about it either. But the Magi knew what the star was all about. They had been told that, to anticipate that hundreds of years before. And they came to Herod, asking to see the King of the Jews. Which is pretty gutsy because, of course, Herod was the king of the Jews. But, of course, they weren't talking about Herod. They were talking about the Messiah. It says they're come to worship him. These are Magi. These are men of distinction. When Herod the king, verse 3, heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And they said unto him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, which was Micah, and thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. He wants to know when he was born. When was the Messiah born? Why? Because he wanted to know how old he was. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search diligently for the young child. You notice he didn't say the baby. This is long enough after they saw it that he said, everybody thinks this is a nativity scene. It's not. Diligently search for the young child, and when you have found him, bring me word again that I may come and worship him also. Which is, of course, a lie. When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till they came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were come into the house, now you notice this isn't a stable, this isn't a mansion anymore, it's a house. They saw the young child. Again, it's not the baby, it's a young child. So this is a significant amount of time afterwards. With Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, all very costly. It's interesting. Of course, there's signification to this. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh, they're all valuable, but gold speaks to purity and eternity. Frankincense, to praise. It was used in incense, so it was to praise to God. And myrrh was always used in the preparation for death. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, arise, take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, And be thou there until I bring thee word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt I have called my son. And that was in Jeremiah. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem and in all the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under. Why? It was about 2 years since the star first appeared. According to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken of by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, In Ramah there was a voice heard, lamentation and weeping, and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be more comforted, because they are not. When Herod was dead, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Arise and take the young child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life. And he arose and took the young child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus did reign in Judea in the room of his father Herod, he was afraid to go thither, notwithstanding, being warned of God in a dream, he turned aside into the parts of Galilee, and he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called the Nazarene. It's interesting, like I said, most people think this is a nativity thing. This is not. This is like 2 years after. But the important parts of the story, we know from last week. All Mary and Joseph had to do was say, Lord, I'm with your program. I don't understand it. I don't have to understand it. I'll do what you ask. And then God started doing supernatural things. She conceives supernaturally. He takes her in. There's room in the inn. The child is born. Then the angels of God come out, and the shepherds come, and it's like, wow. You know, but this is interesting because this happens like 2 years afterwards. So they're living life in the midst of all of this, and they know all you got to do is just serve God. But after 2 years, sometimes you can get just a little bit weary. And what happens in the midst of this 2 years? They've seen the star. They didn't know anything about it. And these 3 Magi show up. Distinguished people, people with power. And they come and they worship Jesus. Now, they know he's the Messiah. God made that clear to both Mary and Joseph. They're worshiping the child, and then they leave these very expensive gifts. Point number 1, when you're serving God, you're going to be blessed. But you notice, they gave the gifts to the child. Now, maybe Jesus. I mean, the 2-year-old isn't going to be spending anything. So obviously it was left in their care. They were stewards of it. How does that pertain to us? Well, it's very important. The Jesus in us, that must be nurtured. It's conceived supernaturally. We all conceive of Jesus supernaturally in our hearts. We accept him into our lives. We go from having no faith in God and not believing to a faith in God. There's no greater faith than that, really, to go from not believing to believing. Since there's no hard proof. I mean, there's no written proof. There's no mathematical proof. But we know it in our hearts. Jesus is alive. He's in us. But he has to be nurtured. Just like Mary and Joseph nurtured him in their roles. So he has to be nurtured in our heart. And in the process of doing that, yes, we will see supernatural things happen, and we will see the blessing of God. But remember, when God blesses you, it's stewardship. It's not that Mary and Joseph didn't enjoy any of that. They had to live. They had to take care of the child. But the point was, they were responsible for what they were given. It wasn't to squander it on themselves. Not to just spend it and have a good time, and it's like, well, there's enough for the baby this month. Doesn't work like that. Then the second thing that's really important about this is you'll notice there's a lot of moving around. They end up in Egypt, and they end up in Nazareth, and it's like, now you can look at that and say, well, That doesn't sound very convenient. That's not the issue. The issue is every time that there was danger, God spoke to Joseph and said, this is what you need to do. He was never in danger. He never had anything to fear because God was always taking care of him because he was taking care of Jesus. Point number 2. As long as you are serving God and you're taking care of God and you're nurturing the God in your life, you're nurturing the Jesus in your life, he's going to keep you out of danger. He's going to keep you out of problems. He may take you in places you never expected to go, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's always safe. It's always a place of provision. It's always a place of goodness. Like Psalm 23 says, he leads me in his paths of righteousness. He leads me to still waters and green pastures. He restores my soul. He does the leading. But in the process, he takes care of me. He keeps me safe. So on one side, we have the safety simply by obeying God. On the other side, we have blessing simply by obeying God. And nurturing, most of all the time, nurturing the Jesus in our hearts that was placed there. Recognizing it's all stewardship. Because we want Jesus to come to fullness in our lives. That's why nurturing is so important. He finally came and settled in Nazareth. Well, we know the story in a general context. We know somewhere along the line, Joseph passed. Jesus is the oldest one who took responsibility for the family. But the thing is, they were consistent. As we need to be in the Holy Spirit. Now, you can't feed a baby just once every 3 days. That's not going to work. You can't change the baby once a day, because that's not going to work. You have to tend a baby, and that's 24/7. I can remember when my first one, she was awake every hour and a half all night long. Wanted to be fed, of course, had to change the diaper too. Burnt us out after about 4 weeks. But that's how babies are. You have to tend babies. And the Jesus in our hearts has to be tended. We have to take care of him. We have to nurture him to come to the fullness, to maturity in our lives. And that's going to take attention when we don't want to. It's not that Jesus is small. Jesus is small in our lives until we make him big in our lives. But God will always tend him. God will always bless him. God will always take care of him as long as we're doing what we need to do. And that's my message for today.